evening, and thank you so much for joining us on this primary election night. Highlights include a shift to the state capitol, a critical district attorney's race in Denver, and a number of congressional races. That's where we start, with Lauren Boebert winning in a crowded race in her new district. Boebert switched districts after Ken Buck resigned. She had 5 primary opponents and took more than 40% of the vote. Greg Lopez will finish Buck's term. He won a special election by a wide margin. We are covering Colorado with coverage for you all across the state. Your political reporter, Sean Boyd, standing by, and your reporters are live in their communities. First, though, let's get out to Dylan Thomas live from Windsor with reaction from Lauren Boebert. Dylan.
You know, a big victory for their campaign tonight, once again transferring out of the mountains into a new district here that largely covers eastern Colorado, Douglas County, Weld County, and into part of Larimer County as well when it comes to Loveland. Now, I had the opportunity to talk with the Congresswoman tonight, and she tells us this is a big victory for them, but this is only just the beginning. They have not secured that seat yet. They still have to do that in November, but now they do represent the Republicans in this effort. She tells me when it comes to this community that she is now hoping to represent, it's different from the rest of the Denver metro area. There are different priorities, different morals, and she says that is why it's so important for her to be able to represent the Coloradans here. Here, take a listen to what she had to tell me.
In Douglas County, look, inflation is impacting all of us. The open border is impacting all of us. Our children being attacked by this wokeism that has taken over is affecting all of us. And they know undoubtedly that I am the one to stand in the way of our children from those attacks and to fight to lower inflation, to get oil and gas production back in Colorado.
Obviously, oil and gas, a big talker here in northern Colorado. Now, the Congresswoman telling us that this was a family-first decision, she says, to move to this district and away from the district that she barely won several years ago. She tells us this was about prioritizing her children. At the same time, she also tells us the work now begins. She says it's not just a priority to get herself elected in November. She tells us it's even more important to make sure President Trump gets elected in November. She was sporting some of his Trump-branded shoes tonight, and also a hat that was signed by him. Reporting live tonight in Windsor, Dylan Thomas covering Colorado First.
All right, Dylan, thank you so much for your live reports all evening tonight. So, Sean, what is the takeaway from this race?
I think Boebert made the right decision by switching districts. CD4 is not CD3, where she barely beat a Democrat in 2022 and would have struggled in the GOP primary. While she decisively won CD4, it's worth noting 60% of voters chose someone else. If this were a 2-way race instead of a 6-way race, would have been different.
Yeah, different outcome for sure. All right, Sean, thank you. We'll be back with you in just a second. Right now, we want to head out to Alan Janae in Douglas County. And Alan, you talked with Deborah Flora. She was one of Boebert's opponents, and a lot of eyes were certainly on her.
Well, they certainly were. She raised the second most amount of money to Lauren Boebert. She had a strong organization of volunteers who were out working the polls for her. But what she did not have was Lauren Boebert's endorsement by Donald Trump, nor did she have Lauren Boebert's incumbent status, even if it was from another congressional district. As she spoke with supporters tonight, she talked about at the event here, in concession, a desire to fight for what she believes in. She talked about going back to the era of Ronald Reagan and big tent politics. Deborah Flora, who has been a radio talk show host, was in a race with other current and past state lawmakers and a businessman. 4 others remaining in the race in addition to Lauren Boebert. In the divided Republican Party, if there was a non-MAGA vote, it was certainly split, and that cost her.
Well, I do think a 6-person race is very challenging. I mean, no one, won with the majority of the vote, so it's going to be a plurality. So I think a 6-person race is always challenging. And I think that's something where the voters then don't have a real clear choice. But you know what? Lauren Boebert did win tonight, and that's the way it worked out in this race.
Deborah Flora did talk about the low voter turnout being potentially indicative of a lack of interest. She says at this point she'll take some time away from things with her family, but then she will support Lauren Boebert in November when Boebert faces off against her Democratic challenger. And she says she will still continue an attempt to unify the party. In Parker, I'm Alan Janae, covering Colorado First.
All right, Alan, thank you. Well, former President Donald Trump endorsed Boebert. So how much did that help her, do you think, Sean?
You know, it definitely helped some, but it wasn't a deciding factor. All the Republicans in CD4 supported Trump. Boebert benefited from a crowded field again, more name recognition and big money. She was the de facto incumbent in this race. CD4 is the most conservative district in the state, so Boebert is all but certain to win in November.
Yeah.